Let's go part 1. Please subscribe channel. You know that feeling when your gut warns you something is about to go wrong, and you ignore it? Yeah, this is the story of the one time I didn't ignore it, and how I turned a power-tripping security guard's own ego against him. I had officially dropped out of university. No dramatic exit. No argument with professors. Just paperwork, deadlines, and the quiet acceptance that this chapter of my life was done. All I needed to do was one last thing. Pick up my documents. Transcript. Subject scores. Refund paperwork for the tuition I'd overpaid. Simple, clean, in and out. At least that was the plan. If you've ever been on a university campus with strict security, you already know the type. Turnstiles. ID scanners. Guards who act like they're protecting nuclear. Launch codes instead of lecture halls. Most of them were fine. But there was one. Every campus has one. I'll call him the Imp. Short. Permanently angry. Always looking for someone to dominate. I'd seen him harass students for years, especially girls. Schoolgirls taking evening courses. First-year students whose cards stopped working. Visitors who didn't know the rules yet. I'd watched him reduce people to tears while pretending he was just doing his job. And today, my ID card was deactivated. I had a bad feeling before I even reached the gate. That tight, quiet pressure in your chest that says, something's about to happen. So I listened. Outside the campus fence, a couple of guys were smoking. Students. I asked them if I could briefly borrow an active ID card. They shrugged. No big deal. I slipped in through the turnstile, passed the card back through the fence. Clean job, no drama. Everyone wins. Inside, I handled my business. Signed forms. Collected papers. Requested my refund. Closure. And then it was time to leave. That's when the real problem started. Normally, if a guard was in a bad mood, you could just walk to a different exit. No confrontation. No nonsense. But I didn't want to wander around campus like a fugitive checking guard rotations. So I did what any rational person would do. I walked straight toward the main checkpoint. And of course, the Imp was on duty. I knocked on the glass of his little booth. Politely, calmly. Hi, I don't have an ID anymore. I'm no longer a student. I just picked up my documents and need to exit. That's it. No attitude. No aggression. His response? Instant hostility. His face hardened like I'd personally insulted his ancestors. How did you get inside? He snapped. I told him the safest lie I could manage. That I'd entered earlier while my card was still active. He didn't care. He refused to unlock the turnstile. Started threatening reports, calls, accusations of trespassing. He told me to go to another checkpoint. On the other side of the turnstile. Let me be clear here. This man was refusing to let me leave. I wasn't trying to enter. I wasn't breaking anything. I wasn't even a student anymore. I was trapped because he wanted to feel powerful. I asked him calmly. So, are you planning to hold me here against my will? That was a mistake. People like him don't respond to logic. They respond to ego. That's when something clicked. Behind him, past the turnstile, was the pass office. The place where incident reports were written. And suddenly, a thought sparked. Not fully formed, not logical, instinctual, predatory. I realized something important. If he wanted to punish me, he'd have to come out. So, I did the only thing that would guarantee that. I attacked his ego. Hard. I started shouting. I called him every name I knew. Asshole, bastard, cunt. The kind of words that make insecure men see red. I turned around like I was walking back into campus. And inside, nothing. No fear, no guilt. Just curiosity. Let's see what happens. It worked instantly. What did you just say? He screamed. The booth door slammed open. He charged at me, grabbing my arm, yelling about dragging me into the office. And in that moment, he did the one thing he absolutely couldn't undo. He opened the turnstile. The second it clicked open, everything slowed down. I slipped out of his grip, looked him dead in the eye, and said, I don't study here anymore. And then I walked away. Behind me, pure chaos. He was cursing, shouting, furious. And then I heard something unexpected. Laughter. Students nearby had seen everything. They'd watched him lose control, watched him get outplayed, watched the bully trip over his own authority. Their laughter followed me all the way out. And just like that, I was free. Did I provoke him? Absolutely. Was I rude? Without question. Do I regret it? Not even a little. Because that day, the campus bully didn't win. The system didn't crush someone quietly. And, for once, the person abusing their power paid for it. Not with violence. Not with revenge. But with their own temper. It felt like solving a quick-time event in a video game. One precise button press. Perfect timing. Escape successful. TLDR. A power-tripping campus security guard refused to let me exit after... I picked up my dropout papers. I insulted him on purpose so he'd storm out of his booth, forcing him to open the turnstile. I slipped away while students laughed and left him raging. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. And what's the smartest way you've ever outplayed someone on a power trip? Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't force. There's an unspoken rule in life that most people learn the easy way. If you're doing something illegal, don't be rude to the people who know your name, your address, and have absolutely nothing to lose. This guy didn't get that memo. And 15 years ago, that mistake cost him everything. Back then, I worked at a hydroponics store. If you've never been in one, let me paint the picture. Bright lights, fertilizer shelves, pumps, timers, grow tents. Officially, we sold supplies for growing tomatoes. Unofficially, everyone knew exactly what most of those tomatoes really were. And that was fine. As long as customers followed the rules, we followed the rules. No judgment, no questions, no drama. Until he showed up. He was the kind of customer you immediately clock as a problem. Mid-30s, loud, condescending. Always. Talking down to you like he was doing you a favor by being there. He came in multiple times, always buying large quantities. Not beginner stuff. I'm talking full setups. Lights, nutrients, advanced equipment. Enough tomatoes to supply a small army. And every single time, he acted like the store owed him something. He'd snap his fingers to get attention. Interrupt conversations. Correct you on things he clearly didn't understand. The kind of guy who confuses spending money with having authority. But whatever. Retail teaches you to swallow your pride. So I did my job. Until one day, he came in demanding a refund. I honestly don't remember the exact item. What I do remember is that it was very clearly against store policy. Special use equipment. Opened. Used. I explained it calmly. No problem, but I can't refund or exchange this. Instant explosion. He raised his voice. Started accusing me of scamming him. Said I didn't know how to do my job. So I told him to contact the owner. Which he did. And the owner folded like a lawn chair. Instead of backing me up, the owner called me into the office and tore into me. Berated me. Told me I should have just done the transaction. Didn't care about policy. Didn't care about precedent. Just cared about keeping a big spender happy. I remember standing there thinking, so that's how this is going to be. A few days later, the guy came back. And now? Now he was unbearable. Smug, loud, entitled. He made sure to mention the owner by name every chance he got. Oh yeah, the owner said you were wrong. Oh yeah, he told me to come straight to him next time. He wasn't just rude anymore. He was emboldened. Around this time, he placed several special orders. The kind of orders that legally required us to collect customer information. Name, phone number, address. No exceptions. And given the scale of what he was buying, let's just say these weren't backyard hobby tomatoes. This was industrial. As I took his information, something shifted in my head. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I was calm. Because I realized something important. This man had made a very bad assumption. He thought I was powerless. After my shift, I went home, sat down, and called the police tip line. Not 911, not some dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet, anonymous call. I gave them the information I had legally collected. Name, address, details about the equipment. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't lie. I just told the truth. And then I forgot about it. Weeks passed. Then months. Life moved on. Customers came and went. And honestly, I assumed nothing would come of it. Until one afternoon, someone mentioned his name in passing. Heard that guy got busted. I froze. What? Turns out the police had been watching him, monitoring, building a case. And when they finally went in, they found exactly what you'd expect. A house full of plants. A full operation. No tomatoes in sight. He was arrested, charged, and later convicted. And then came the best part. Because since the tip directly led to the arrest, I received a reward. $500. Cash. I remember holding that money and laughing. Not because of the cash, but because of the irony. This man thought he was untouchable. Thought money made him powerful. Thought yelling at retail workers had no consequences. And in the end, it wasn't the police he underestimated. It was me. Here's the thing. I didn't go out of my way to ruin his life. I didn't stalk him. I didn't set him up. All I did was my job. And when he decided to treat me like garbage, I used the tools already in my hands. Moral of the story? Be kind to people, especially the ones who know your name. Because if you're doing something illegal and you decide to be an asshole, don't be surprised when the consequences finally find you. TLDR, I worked at a hydroponics store. A rude, entitled customer bullied staff and broke policy. After collecting his info for special orders, I anonymously tipped off the police. Months later, he was arrested for growing illegal plants, and I got a $500 reward. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and comment below. What's the most satisfying, quiet revenge you've ever witnessed? I didn't catch my wife cheating the way people expect. There was no lipstick on a collar. No late-night texts lighting up the room. No sudden passwords or suspicious phone calls. It started with mileage. Back in the early 2000s, my wife and I had 2 kids, 4 and 6 years old. Old enough to talk. Old enough to casually mention things without realizing they mattered. That's what tipped me off. They started talking about staying with their grandparents during the day. At first, it didn't seem strange. My wife worked part-time, and sometimes childcare gets complicated. But her parents lived 90 minutes away, and the kids mentioned being there a lot. 2 or 3 times a week. Almost every day she wasn't working. When I asked her about it, she shrugged it off. Said I was imagining things. Said she might have gone a couple times. She was a terrible liar. So I stopped asking questions and started paying attention. I tracked the mileage on her car. Nothing fancy, just wrote it down once a week. Within a month, the numbers didn't lie. She was driving an extra 400 miles a week. No errands explain that. No innocent explanation fills that gap. Something was happening. And then one day, she made a mistake so small it almost felt like fate. She left a sticky note on the computer desk. Her AOL password. This was before smartphones, before two-factor authentication, before digital paranoia. She probably never imagined I'd look. I looked. I logged into her email. And there it was. Chain of emails between her and her college best friend. Casual, laughing, cruel. They talked about how my wife was sleeping with one of her old high school ex-boyfriends. How often, how exciting it was. And then, the part that stuck with me the longest, they laughed about his wife, made fun of her weight, mocked her body after having kids. I printed everything. Didn't confront her. Didn't scream. Didn't even let my hands shake. I just needed proof. Real proof. So I called a friend of mine who was a cop. He listened quietly and said something I'll never forget. Call Ron. Ron was a former detective who'd gone private. A professional, discreet, ruthless in the most boring, methodical way. I hired him, gave him the emails, the schedule, the mileage, and Ron delivered. His report was flawless. Photos, dates, times, locations. My wife would drop the kids at her parents' house, drive to meet him for lunch. Then they'd go to a cheap motel for a few hours. After that, she'd pick up the kids and come home like nothing happened. I stared at those photos for a long time. Not because I was angry, but because something in me went completely quiet. I hired a divorce lawyer the same week. I grew up in a home where cheating destroyed everything. My parents tore each other apart, and my siblings and I paid the price for years. I swore I'd never do that to my kids, so I planned carefully. Then I asked Ron to dig into the man she was cheating with. Ron smiled when I asked. Turns out his name was Bob. Bob was married. Bob had 3 kids. And Bob worked as a vice president of sales at a company owned by his father-in-law. That detail mattered. I had my lawyer draw up the divorce papers. Then I asked Ron for multiple copies of his report. And one more favor. On the same day, my wife was served divorce papers at her workplace. Ron met Bob's wife. He showed her everything. Every photo. Every timestamp. Every motel receipt. I didn't ask Ron what she said. I didn't need to. Because the aftermath was public record. Bob's wife emptied their joint accounts. Took the kids, left. Her father fired Bob immediately. And since her parents owned the house Bob lived in, he was evicted. The divorce was brutal. Court filings showed restraining orders, police reports, physical confrontations. At one point, Bob showed up at the house and started arguing. His brother-in-law stepped in. Bob left with a broken nose. There were arrests, charges, jail time. I searched for Bob years later. Nothing. No LinkedIn. No Facebook. No trace. He disappeared. His ex-wife, though. She went to work at her dad's company. He eventually took it over when he retired. She did just fine. As for me, the divorce with my ex was calm, clinical, focused on the kids. I didn't fight her. I didn't punish her. I didn't destroy her life. I just removed her from mine. We co-parented. We were civil. We spoke only about what mattered. Now our kids are adults. I don't speak to her at all anymore. I don't hate her. She's simply someone I used to know. And that's the thing people misunderstand about revenge. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to cost you your soul. Sometimes, the most devastating, revenge is letting the truth speak to the people who deserve to hear it. And then walking away while everything burns behind you. Because if you're going to cheat on your wife with mine, you better be prepared to lose everything. I didn't scream when they fired me. I didn't threaten legal action. I didn't storm out. I didn't even look angry. I just smiled politely and let them destroy themselves. This happened in the early 2010s, back when YouTube wasn't the monster it is today. Universities were just starting to realize that video content mattered. Social media teams were tiny. Video departments were usually one person, if they existed at all. That one person was me. I was hired as a content creator for a university that wanted to kickstart their YouTube branding. The pay was terrible, about $2,200 USD a month, but at the time, video jobs were rare, and I needed the experience. On paper, it sounded manageable. In reality, it was a nightmare wrapped in a smile. On my second day, my manager sat me down and slid a document across the table. My KPI, 85 videos, each 3 to 10 minutes long, in 52 weeks, by one person, no team, no assistants, no budget. Just me. And here's the fun part, I wasn't just editing. I was writing scripts, casting talent, directing shoots, running camera, recording audio, composing music. Yes, composing. They were too cheap to pay for a royalty-free music subscription, so they expected original scores. Oh, and I had to use my own equipment. Their cameras were ancient. Their computers couldn't even handle 720p, let alone 1080p. I tried to explain this to my manager. She smiled. That corporate weaponized smile. She told me, just give it a try. If the videos are good, I won't focus too much on quantity. That sentence would later become the rope she hung herself with. So I agreed. For the first month, things were fine. She was pleasant, encouraging, almost friendly. Then she found out I was a smoker. And overnight she became a different person. Her tone changed. Her patience vanished. Her eyes sharpened. A colleague literally facepalmed when I mentioned it. She pulled me aside and whispered, "She hates smokers. She's gotten people fired for that." And suddenly, nothing I did was right. If I came back from a break, smelling like smoke, problem. If I arrived 5 minutes late, problem. If I wasn't reachable during lunch, problem. Never mind the fact I was working 60+ hours a week, 6 days straight. Never mind the overtime. Never mind that my videos were performing better than anything the university had ever posted. I kept my head down. I told myself, just do the work. Let the results speak. 5 months in, I was called into the director's office. My manager was already there. She had that expression, the one where someone pretends to be disappointed, but you can see the excitement leaking through the cracks. My stomach dropped. The director folded her hands and said she was concerned. Concerned that I had only completed 30 videos. I explained everything. The workload, the hours, the fact I was a one-man army, the fact those 30 videos had the highest view counts the channel had ever seen. I even repeated my manager's exact words. She told me quality mattered more than quantity. The director didn't care. She said the KPI was simple, 85 videos in a year. And since we were nearly halfway through the year, she felt it was best to cut the cord early. Then my manager smirked and said something that changed everything. We'll just hire a professional production house to finish his work. The director gave her a strange look, then nodded. You don't need to worry, she told me. Manager will get the job done. That's when the light bulb went off. Because I was the content professional, and one of my responsibilities was maintaining the university's database of production houses, a database my manager knew absolutely nothing about. I walked back to my desk and calmly rewrote history. I changed phone numbers, scrambled emails, broke contact links, all except one. A production house where my friend worked? I called him immediately, told him everything. Then I laid out the plan. He'd pitch for the job. I'd coach him exactly how to win it. And his company would pay me a 15% finder's fee. He didn't hesitate. Neither did his general manager. Especially when he realized this was 6 months of work worth high 6 figures. I handed them a playbook. What the university wanted to hear. What visuals they loved. What buzzwords made the director nod? What my manager secretly obsessed over? When they came in to pitch, they were the perfect fit. The director was amazed. My manager was glowing. They signed the contract on the spot. Now here's the part my former boss didn't understand. Hiring a production house is expensive. Very expensive. Each video cost 2 to 3 times my monthly salary. But with a full crew, producers, directors, editors, they could pump out content fast. And they did. 50 videos in 4 months? At a cost equal to over 100 months of my salary. And I collected 15 months worth of pay without lifting a finger. I went on holiday. I saved money. I enrolled in a respected film school overseas. I thought that was the end of it. Then I got a call in Bali from the same colleague who had warned me about my manager. She was laughing. My former manager had been fired. The director had been absolutely destroyed by the chancellor. Turns out the project I was hired for had a budget equal to about 1.5 years of my salary. They exceeded it by over 10 times. My manager had panicked, so desperate to prove she could finish the project without me, that she approved massive spending without authorization. She sacrificed herself trying to save face. And failed. My friend? He got promoted to full director at his production house. Me? I got paid for 1 year, after getting fired. And the best part, I never raised my voice. I never broke a rule. I just let arrogant people underestimate the quiet guy who actually knew how everything worked. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's budget approvals, signed contracts, and watching karma audit the books.